Hi guys, so this week we are again discussing visual texture, and we remember hopefully that texture is something that we can feel with our hands, and visual texture is something that we can see and imagine how that might feel. So we're going to be creating these fields of flowers. Now, if you don't want to create flowers with your paper shapes on top, you could always come up with something else creative to go on top of your grass background. But we're going to be making a background that looks kind of like grass, and we're going to be using some objects to paint today. And then whatever you want to glue on top of it, animals, insects, leaves, flowers, is up to you, and we'll be focusing on shapes for that part. So the first thing I've done is I've gotten myself some green paint. Now, obviously you don't have to use green. Your background can really be whatever color you want it to be. But if you're trying to make your background look like grass, I would suggest some shade of green. You can see this one's a little bit blue. So you could do green, you could do yellow green, you could do blue green. And then I've gotten some things that are not a paintbrush that I want to paint with to create that visual texture for myself. So I have a plastic fork. This is a super great thing to use. I have one of these wooden clothespins. That's also sometimes very cool to use, and sometimes I like to break them in order to paint with them. Remember, if you're using objects from around your home, please ask your grown-up if it's okay if you paint with that before you start using it. We don't want to upset anybody by using something that was special to them or useful. I also have a rubber band, and I found a popsicle stick. So I'm going to be using all of these to paint today. Let me start by breaking my clothespin so I can paint with the side of it and the top. I like that texture a little bit better. So I'm going to start with my fork, I believe. So I'm just going to swirl my fork around in this paint. And then I'm going to start making visual texture marks on my paper. And you can see that the fork kind of drags back through itself and makes these awesome lines. You could also pour a little bit of paint on your paper and drag some object through the paint rather than using the object itself to paint. But you can see already that's kind of starting to look like a grass texture. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to use the rest of this kind of bluish color with my fork. And then I will switch objects to something different. So I like that. It's textured already. Now remember, for this project, that part of using our best craftsmanship is filling our paper and using our space really well. So we don't just want to do a little bit of texture painting in the middle and leave the whole background white. We really want to make sure that we are painting edge to edge and covering our whole paper in texture. Now, if you don't have paint at home to do some texture painting with, a good option would also be to find some objects that have texture, like maybe a fabric, maybe some cardboard, maybe go outside and find a brick wall, and you can use some crayons or colored pencils. If you put your piece of paper over a textured object like a rubbing plate or like a brick wall or something, and then you rub your crayon over your paper on top of that object, it will transfer that visual texture to your paper too. So that's a great option if you don't happen to have paint at home. So I'm going to try a couple of my other objects real fast before I show you how to get started on your collage. So maybe this could be like a leaf. I'm using this for stamping. You could always try dragging and see how that looks too. Maybe I'll try my rubber band. I'm gonna kind of squish it around in my paint and get my fingers super messy. And then I'm just gonna roll my rubber band across my paper and make some visual texture and some different kinds of shapes. That looks really cool. I like that a lot too. You could also use your fingers to paint because our fingers have a texture. Be sure you ask your grown-up before doing that. And you are responsible for cleaning up your own messes. But our fingers have texture on them too. Our fingerprints are a texture, so you could always add some fingerprints make them almost look like leaves. That would be really awesome. So Mrs. Turner is not nearly done. I have a lot of work to do on my background still to fill up all that white space with green, but I wanted to show you our next step after you get your background all painted, and my fingers are really messy, but I don't want to go wash them right now. It would be getting some colored paper or some old magazines, old newspapers, or even coloring a white piece of paper and then cutting that out. We're going to be cutting out a variety of shapes to use for either flowers, or like I said, you don't have to do flowers. You could do something like insects or bugs, or insects and bugs are the same thing. You do something like insects or leaves, something that you might find outside. But we want to use a good mix of geometric shapes. So hopefully you guys remember geometric shapes have rules. Like a circle is round, so you could use some circles. You could use some squares. This one's kind of a mix between organic and geometric, because it's a star technically, but it's not a symmetrical star. Like if I drew a line down the middle, it wouldn't divide perfectly in half. So this is kind of a mixture of the two. And then I also have a leaf shape that I cut out that is an organic shape because it doesn't have rules and it's inspired by nature. So once I was done covering my whole background, I would start gluing down my pieces of paper to represent my flowers or my elements of the outdoors, whatever I want to do. We hope you guys have a lot of fun hunting around for some fun items to create texture in your artwork this week. And please, if you give this project a try, don't forget to share with us. We love seeing what you make. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.